Welcome to the online lectures for information security. In today's class, we'll be beginning with continuity strategies. A key role for all managers within the contingency plan and other managers within the IT department, or you've got different information security professionals. Now, the job of all of them is to provide some strategic planning so that you can assure that there is a continuity in the availability of information of all the systems. That is continuity strategies. Now, this within this continuity planning, you've got a business impact analysis. Now, this business impact analysis is split into three types, that is the incident response, disaster response, and business continuity planning. There are three types of planning. So, these are the three components of contingency planning. We'll be studying each of them in detail. Now, this disaster and business continuity, this is also called as the business resumption planning. Now, the continuity strategies, now we can classify, as you've seen that we have classified the continuity strategies into three: the incident response planning, that is called as your IRP. Then the disaster recovery planning is DRP, and the business continuity planning is BCP. Now, so these are the three components of continuity strategy. Now, what is each of them? Now, this IRP, that is the incident response planning, it focuses on immediate response. That is, if something has occurred, how you're going to respond to it. If an attack escalates or is disastrous, process changes to disaster recovery and BCP. That is, if suppose there is an attack, if that attack has progressed to a disaster, then it is going to focus, that IRP is going to go to DRP. Then if there is a disaster, means there might be a lot of loss in information. So you need to then go to the BCP component. So DRP focuses on restoring system. And now within a disaster, what happens? You need to restore the system. There's a lot of loss of information. There's a lot and loss of services. So you're going to focus on how you're going to restore this system, this different systems from a disaster. And BCP occurs concurrently with DRP. As you're focusing on the disaster response planning, you also need to focus upon the BCP. So these two, they occur in parallel. When damage is major, that is from the DRP you get to know, or it is a long term, then you need to focus upon how you're going to continue the working of the business, whether you're going to provide, where you're going to back up all the system information, is there a different location that the employees can work on. So this is the three primary functions within the continuity strategies. The next is the contingency planning team. Now, this contingency planning team, mm, before any planning can begin, you need to have a team that is going to plan what needs to be done. You need to prepare the resulting documents. So, the different members, the first is a champion. The champion is a high level manager. His job is to support, promote, and endorse the different findings within the project. That is, when you discover there's a new thing within the project or something that can be added, so you're going to support, promote, and endorse finding of a product. Then you've got the project manager. And this project manager, he leads the project. As he's the manager, he's the one who's going to lead the project and make sure that sound project planning is, as he's the manager, he's in control of everything. He needs to see whether each and everything, whether the work is being done and how it is being done. He does the job of the project manager. Then team members are the people that are working under the project manager. Now these team members should be manager or their representatives from the various communities of interest. This can be the business people, the IT department people, the information security people. These are your different team members within the contingency planning team. Now here, this is the contingency planning timeline. You've got three components: incident response planning, disaster response planning, and the business continuity planning. Three components are there. Now within these three different components, the first case is the incident detection. If suppose there is an attack is being, if the system has detected an attack. So when you have detected an attack, you need to, what is going to be the reaction that needs to be identified. Then incident recovery, how you're going to recover from that particular incident. Now, if suppose the incident detection, while you've detected an incident, if you find out more, that you get to know that this incident is a disaster, that is the occurrence of this particular event was due to an earthquake or due to some site crashing due to winds, so that is going to go to the disaster. You get to know how you're going to do a disaster reaction, what is the different steps that you're going to follow. Then the disaster recovery is restore the operation at the primary site, that is for the main site, how you're going to restore the operations at that particular site. That this might require a lot of time. And then, as it was told earlier, that DRP is going to work along with the BCP. That is, as well as you know that a disaster has occurred, you need to focus upon how you're going to continue providing different services within the organization. This is going to be a continuity reaction. That is, you can focus upon an alternate site of operation. That is, if suppose you've got one building, you can focus to you can go to another branch and work. So this is a timeline for contingency plan. So these are your attack occurs, post attack within the hours, and these are days. Now days, that is why you might require to change the site. Now these are the major steps in contingency planning. The few steps that are involved in the BIA, the incident response planning, disaster recovery planning, and the business continuity planning. You're going to first identify it has occurred, then how you're going to manage, and what are the different steps that are required for recovering from that attack and continuing the services. The next is the business impact analysis. Now this is the first phase in the development of your contingency planning, that is your BIA. Now this BIA, this is a type of investigation and assessment of what? The investigation assessment of the impact of an attack on a particular organization. Now within this, you've got different stages that are going to occur within the business impact analysis. You're going to begin with the different prioritized threats, threat attack identification, prioritization. What are the priority threats? You begin with those. Then business unit analysis, which particular area is being affected. Then attack success scenario development, that is how many different assets have been compromised, that is what are the different successful attempts on those assets. Then potential damage assessment, you're going to identify how much damage is there. You're just making a assessment of the different damages. Then subordinate plan classification. That is, you get to know, you add on the different information about the criticalities of the system, the detailed assessments of the threats and the different vulnerabilities. So you can say that BIA adds an insight to a particular organization of what the organization is going to do after the attack, how you're going to minimize the damage of the attack, or how you're going to recover from that attack and return to your normal operation. So this is what the BIA is going to do. The next is incident response planning, the IRP. Now this incident response planning, this is going to cover the identification of the incident or the classification of the incident, or how you're going to respond to a particular incident. These three things are going to be done within the IRP. Identification, classification, and how you're going to respond to that particular incident. Now this incident response is a set of different activities that are there that you can detect and how you're going to correct the impact of that incident. So these attacks are classified as if they are a direct against the information asset. That is, if suppose there was a particular attack that was launched only for that particular asset, or have a realistic chance of success, that is How successful was that attack? Then it could threaten the confidentiality, integrity, or availability of the CIA of the information resource. Based on these, the attacks are classified. Then the incident response planning focuses on 8 different aspects. First, incident planning, what you're going to do. Then incident response means what the organization must do, how you're going to respond to that particular attack. Incident detection, what area is affected, what particular asset is affected. Then incident reaction, what, as you know which particular asset is there, how you're going to minimize the impact of that, you get to know, or you're going to identify this within the reaction, how you're going to, if suppose different assets are being compromised, if suppose the attack is in process now, it is still continuing, how you're going to protect the different assets, whether you can redirect the attack, that is safeguard one particular asset. Then incident containment strategies, and you've got incident recovery, how you're going to recover, how you're going to minimize the damage. Then damage assessment is how much damage is being done. Then automated responses. Automated responses, how a different system is going to respond to this particular attack, how a new system is going to respond to the attack. So these are the different phases within your incident response planning. The next is your disaster recovery planning. Now, this disaster recovery planning, this is a planning and preparation for and recovery from a disaster. How you're going to recover from a particular disaster. This is focused here. Now, this contingency planning team must decide which action constitute disaster and which constitute incident. Now, first step was IR, right? Then the next is the disaster response. Then you've got the business continuity plan. So you need to identify if a particular incident, whether a particular attack, whether it was an incident or whether it was a disaster. Based upon that, you're going to classify. So at the time the decision is made whether it is a attack or whether it is whether it is a incident or is a disaster, the situation can be classified as a disaster. So organization is going to identify and he's going to respond based upon a disaster. How it is going to respond to a particular action, what are the different valuable assets, how you're going to preserve the value for a longer term. These is going to be identified. Now, the main goal of this disaster recovery planning is to make things back to normal, is to make things whole again as they were before the disaster. The next one is the business continuity planning. Now, this business continuity planning, it is going to outline the reestablishment of critical business operations during disaster that impacts the operation. That is how you're going to come back to normal, how you're going to again start working and get the system as a whole. Then you've got the different continuity strategies. Now here, there are a number of strategies for planning of business continuity. That is determining the factor in selecting the options is usually cost. Basically, if you want the system up and running, you're going to identify what are the most cost efficient ones, what can be done for with the less amount of money. Because first is recovering from that disaster is going to cost a lot of money. So you're going to focus upon the recovery based upon the cost options. Now, dedicated recovery site options are hot sites are there, warm sites are there, cold sites are also there. So hot sites are fully operational site. Warm site is fully operational hardware, but software may not be present. So you're going to identify what type of site can be taken. Or cold site are rudimentary services and facilities. So based upon this, there are 3 sites which can be selected. Now you also have different types of shared functions. Time sharing is there. You can have service bureaus or a mutual agreement between different parties. Or you can also have an off-site disaster data storage. And now just can be used in place of a disaster to get this type of site up and running quickly, because all of the data is stored at another storage. How you're going to have all this data ported to the new site. The next is the crisis management. Now, crisis management, it basically includes what is the action that you're going to take after a disaster. This is going to focus first and foremost upon the different people that are involved, what are the different options that are available, how you're going to address the different aspects in the business, in the organization, how you're going to deal with a particular disaster or a particular incident. So, what may truly distinguish an incident from a disaster are the actions of your response team. Now, this disaster recovery is done by three different aspects, that is preparation, training, and rehearsals. Now, you can train the employees by giving us particular scenario and training the people of how they are going to respond for a particular crisis. In place of a disaster or in place of an incident, what are the different tasks that you need to do? That training can be done. The next is the law enforcement involvement. Now, when an incident at hand that is going to constitute a violation of law, that is, there are different laws that need to be followed. If there is a violation of law, if someone is not following that particular law, then you need to have the law enforcement involved so that they can properly deal with that particular violation of services. So there are several questions that need to be answered, that why, first place, why a law enforcement is being involved, what type of law, what level of law enforcement is involved. Everything needs to be answered here. Now, there are few advantages and disadvantages of involving the law enforcement. The advantage can be law enforcement agencies are prepared to handle any necessary warrants and subpoenas. That is, if suppose there is a violation of service, if you have a law enforcement, if there is a warrant that is being issued, or another party is requesting, subpoenas are requesting all of your files, all of the documents that are related to that particular file. So if you have a law enforcement, they've got a better strategy of how they're going to handle all the scenarios. And law enforcement is also skilled at obtaining the witness statements, for how they're going to, they might twist some statements and get the people to accept what they've done. Then there are also disadvantages. Now there are disadvantages that when you're involved law enforcement field, law enforcement team, there is, you cannot predict what can happen, because everything comes in a chain. If you've got a law enforcement team, there are different warrants that can be issued, subpoenas are issued, how they're going to deal with it. There might be, it would also take a lot of weeks, months, or years of time to complete a case. So these are different advantages and disadvantages of involving the law enforcement teams. That's the end of today's class.